Okay, so it seems that a week can't pass without some new type of Microsoft controversy. This week, Satya Nadella gave an interview where, basically there's a lot of comments about how Xbox isn't actually competing with other consoles, actually competing with TikTok. I think that's been slightly taken out of context, but there's also some intriguing comments here about the nature of the next generation console. There's been reporting from Windows Central, which basically sort of was trying to put together everything we know about the next generation consoles, which is to say it's a hybrid PC that runs other stores. I'm not sure the extent to which that is news. I feel like we've been talking about that for a very, very long time now. But again, there were some comments from Nadella about that as well. Comments that I don't fully understand. But Oliver, maybe you could clue me in.
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing here because he's talking about how console is an unparalleled experience, and then he's talking about, we're looking forward to the next console, the next PC gaming, which is not quite grammatical and doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think that, Satya is kind of not so subtly hinting at the future direction of Xbox and the fact that it is going to be a Windows business based computer, because as he says here, the biggest gaming business is the Windows business. Now, I find that kind of funny because he is saying that, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think that Windows is like a huge business. Obviously, it's a huge business in gaming. But as Satya himself admits, Microsoft is not the publisher, the key platform holder in PC gaming at the moment. That's Steam. Steam is the key publisher in PC gaming.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah.
Key platform holder, I should say, in PC gaming. So that makes them kind of an imperfect driver and an imperfect beholder of the success in that industry, if the industry moves towards more of a PC-first focus, especially with the next generation Xbox. And especially if, as has been reported innumerable times, you'll be able to install Steam on the next generation Xbox just as easily as you can on the ROG Ally device. And I have to say, on the ROG Ally devices, it's very, very easy to install Steam, set that as the default, and never ever look at the Xbox experience again necessarily. You don't need to look at that too much. That's certainly a development that I think undercuts their stake in the PC platform potentially. But yeah, I think there is probably something to this notion that short form video is competing with gaming, just in the sense that it's competing for time, and time is that kind of exhaustible resource that everyone is trying to pursue, is trying to chase here. But I do kind of wonder what the future of gaming looks like if you're looking at TikTok as a main competitor, because TikTok is really scratching an itch with that short form content. I quite enjoy TikTok, I must admit, but it really does satisfy a certain kind of dopamine rush. It gives you that really short form instant gratification. The algorithm has a very good idea of what your preferences are, what you want to see. And so I kind of think if you're looking at new interactive experiences, as Satya is talking about here, they might be able to compete with that. It probably looks more like something like a TikTok with kind of interactive gaming experiences that you swipe through or something like this, than it looks like a AAA, $60 title. Or maybe it looks a little bit like Fortnite, one of these.
Sounds like WarioWare to me.
Yeah, so WarioWare, exactly. And machine learning, an AI WarioWare or something. Perhaps that's what it looks like. I'm not sure that's a great future for the industry, but I could certainly see something like that having the same addictive potential, because that really is the key to TikTok, that swiping behavior, seeing something new, and then the algorithmic delivery of new content that's tailored to your tastes. So I don't know, maybe that's a bit of a bleak vision, but I could definitely see Satya and a lot of executives in the boardroom trying to plan out for that vision. And even in that case, I don't think Microsoft is necessarily well positioned, because Microsoft does not do social media applications. They do some of the backend stuff. They're working on some of the technologies that power kind of machine learning technologies that could power a gaming experience that is enabled by machine learning technologies. But they're not necessarily in the driver's seat for that kind of innovation either. So I'm not totally sure where Satya sees their business. I think they're well positioned to be a massive publisher in AAA. They're well positioned to deliver Call of Duty across many platforms, but they're maybe not as well positioned to be like a huge platform holder in the era of PC gaming, or potentially trying to seize some social media zeitgeist gaming app or something that might emerge in the future. I'm not sure they're necessarily too well positioned.
I think it's worth pointing out that this stuff about TikTok actually came from Xbox's Matt Booty last week, I believe. The headline here from Video Games Chronicle: Xbox's biggest competition isn't another console, but TikTok and movies, claims exec. I mean, it's there's nothing really new here. Gaming's competition is competition with whatever it is that occupies people's free time, and it can be like TV, movies, doom scrolling on your phone, whatever. But, gaming is quite different. It's a different kind of pursuit there. So, with all of this discussion about TikTok, John, I just hope you've got a bucket ready for you to throw up into. but what do you make of these comments?
The TikTok comment was extremely revealing to me. Like you say, this is nothing new. We know that they're competing for your time, but this really puts into sharp focus how much somebody like Matt Booty views their games business is they are they're competing for your engagement. That's what they want. And while that is technically true, if you think about the games industry as a whole over the years, you can't imagine somebody like back in the day creating some of the masterpieces that we beloved. Like when Metal Gear Solid was created, we'll say, do you think that the marketing execs were thinking like, we need to compete with films because we're trying to compete with time? It was more about, we need to make a product that will sell X number of units in order to fund making other cool things. And they were employing creatives to create these cool things, and people liked cool things. Hence why you would employ those creatives, right? It was a simple thing based on like, make a cool thing. It's not about how long you play it. It's about that experience of playing it. And what mattered was how much you sold. Well, more like what mattered is how much you made in reflection to how much you spent to make the thing. And balancing that equation was key. And that's what allowed a lot of creatives to just do their thing. And that's what the console industry used to be. But then, of course, the rise of these sort of forever games and just the way things are these days, the internet, it has become a competition for time, so to speak. And it seems that if these execs are only thinking about that versus like just selling units or just making the money, they're not okay with just making money to recoup costs. They want to make all the money. And I get that from a business perspective, but it just sort of sucks the soul out of what gaming was about, right? And so if your company is being driven by people with this mindset, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I would say this is not the mindset within Nintendo. If you look at what Nintendo in Japan is probably thinking, they're not sitting there thinking we need to get X amount of time from our users. We must extract as much time as possible so that they play Switch for this amount of time. That's not what they're making games for, is my guess. And I think this poisonous thinking is precisely what led Sony down that dark path of the forever game, which has failed. I think this is the mindset of Jim Ryan and the investors and everything that was happening within PlayStation that caused them to end up in the situation. Like, yes, they're selling a lot of units, but we know that they're not producing as efficiently as they used to. And a lot of that's down to studios being railroaded by this forever game nonsense and then having the rug pulled out from under them. And all of that stems from this mindset about just investing to get, you're only making the game to get people's time because you want them to stay in that game and just keep spending money. And that's it. That's the goal. And I think that sucks. I really hate that attitude. And I think it's poisonous and bad for games. I don't think there's necessarily something wrong with having games that keeps people going, but it's become so, I don't know, man. I really don't like this attitude. And it's soured me on a lot on the future. But thankfully, we do still have developers, both in the indie and the big, AAA, AA space that clearly just want to make cool games, and they're able to do that, and they're able to make enough money to keep that going. So I'm fighting for them, basically.
Well, can you just imagine like Warner Brothers or latterly Universal going to Christopher Nolan, hey, this Oppenheimer, it's looking really awesome, right? But have you seen TikTok? Have you seen the amount of time people are scrolling through TikTok? It's just like, come on. If you make a quality experience that demands your time, that earns your time, then,
Right.
that's basically it,
People will
right?
come. And I think there's room for both. One thing I would look at is something like the music industry. Like sometimes I enjoy just like putting music on random and listening to all kinds of stuff streamed from all over the place, and that can be fun. But there's also the art of the album where you sit down and listen to an album through, and that experience is very different, and I think still very special. And I think if we had completely lost the album, we would be losing something major about what makes music so enjoyable. So I fear of my fear would be gaming going so far down this hole of just competing only for your engagement that everything turns into this like mush where it's just like slop, especially with the rise of AI. Everything's about generating things that gets people's eyeballs on it for like 5 seconds. They see it. Yeah. And the next 5 second thing, more and more AI, more co-pilot, more generated stuff, just making stuff to just get people to click on it, to make the money. And it just feels like there's a very bad direction things could go if it continued too far down this path.
Yeah, I do think that the way that Microsoft has set up their gaming business at the moment is more TikTok-like. It is almost to compete with these short-form video content apps because
It's not good.
they're low friction, right? They try to minimize
Yeah.
friction through the use of subscription services, through the use of technologies like the Xbox Cloud, formerly, xCloud, through shipping their games across many, many different devices, every single device all at once. Whereas Nintendo and Sony tend to be making more discrete experiences, less of a focus on streaming, more of a focus on exclusive platforms, maybe are overall more inclined to give you a smaller number of higher quality experiences than the Microsoft approach, which is to basically buffet you with tons of Game Pass content every week, right, to cycle through. So perhaps in their own mind, in their own positioning, they're thinking of their business as a TikTok-like business or as a business that's designed to compete with TikTok. Whereas I think when Sony is making a game like Ghost of Yotei, they're not really thinking, okay, how does this stack up against the latest viral videos, right? Because that's not necessarily their remit with that service.
I'm just going to read out the Nadella comment here. Most importantly, the game's business model has to be where we have to invent maybe some new interactive media as well, because after all, gaming's competition is not other gaming. Gaming's competition is short-form video. And so if we as an industry don't continue to innovate both how we produce, what we produce, how we think about distribution, the economic model, right? The best way to innovate is to have good margins because that's the way you can fund. And I'm just thinking about these kind of like, immediate experiences that give you a kind of like TikTok style hit, so to speak. And oddly enough, we've got like a gigantic catalog of them because old games, originating in the arcades, they were very short experiences designed to hook you immediately. And I was just thinking this week about the Google search logo. You click it and you get a Halloween themed version of Pac-Man. And it's like classic Pac-Man. And it's as, in terms of like that immediate hit, it's kind of as good as it was back in the day. And if it's not modern, well, I direct you to, Geometry Wars, Evolved, games like that, which kind of like the modern successors for those type of immediate experiences that are just equally as brilliant. I think there's room for all different sorts of gaming.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not, and absolutely we have to have innovation, but a lot of the work has already been done. It's just we've kind of transitioned away from it.
Yeah. I mean, I think business-wise, I see exactly where he's coming from. And I think, with a company focused on making money like that, it does make sense. I'm pretty 6'7" on it myself, but, as the proverbial old man that yells at the cloud, I was looking back at
the xCloud?
Yes, correct. I was looking back at footage of the Halo 3 launch, actually, thinking about classic Xbox, right? And there's just an energy and excitement there that, like, man, I really miss. And I don't think it's really hard to recreate that spectacle today. But just like this, like, almost like communal excitement over the release of that game, everybody was so, like, hyped for it, lining up around buildings, it was just everywhere. It was such a big deal. and it felt really fun to be a part of that. Like that actually is, that is the kind of thing, the zeitgeist that you also got with really big movies. And I still think that happens with movies, but it's happening less and less with games. And I feel like games have just like kind of lost that, which, maybe that's just, again, that's just where we're heading. That's the future generation. And I'm just nostalgic for old things again, but those days were good.
Before we move on, I just want to tackle these next-gen console comments. I'm going to, again, read the quote because on the face of it, it doesn't make sense, but I think I kind of understand the sentiment. The quote is, "We want to do innovative work on the system side, on the console and on the PC." And it's kind of funny that people think about the console and PC as two different things. We built the console because we wanted to build a better PC, which could then perform for gaming. And so I kind of want to revisit some of that conventional wisdom. But at the end of the day, console has an experience that is unparalleled. It delivers performance that's unparalleled, that pushes, I think, the system forward. So I'm really looking forward to the next console, the next PC gaming. Kind of sounds a bit like a word salad, right? Since we built the console because we wanted to build a better PC, which could then perform for gaming. I don't quite get that. But what I think is happening here, alongside the comments about a curated experience, I honestly think that it is going to be the case that the Xbox as we know it is kind of like going to be on a sort of partition of Windows, so to speak, that's separate and distinct from running the games on Steam and Epic Game Store, whereas at that point it probably defers to being a standard PC or a standard Windows or a version of it. It really does sound as though they're going to have to keep Xbox within its own area on that particular hardware, which I think is easily the right move forward, simply for security concerns, right? You've got to keep the integrity of the ecosystem. I think it's going to have to be separate and distinct from Windows in that respect. It's just you can run standard Windows games. I think that's kind of the only takeaway that I could possibly get from that sort of comment. How you could possibly marry those two worlds together. But I don't know. I guess we're just going to have to, at some point, just stop reading the tea leaves and just let Microsoft actually reveal what it is that they're doing.